Professor is a prof of strategy and decision making at Strathmore University. He's here so that we can together interrogate Kenya's election system. It's built to be one of the most expensive in the world. And also, what we see is it's one of the least trusted in very many parts of the world. And you ask yourself, why? Why do we get to that point? You get to a point where people are encouraged to go and vote.
Yes.
We start with the voters themselves not trusting the system. So nearly a third of registered voters do not go to vote. They're like, don't go. The 2/3 that go to vote go back home and sit waiting for the results. And then they start seeing the shenanigans taking place at the polling station, at night, at the tallying centers, constituency, county, national. And they are either just sitting back as observers, as spectators, or they're also participating in their living rooms with spreading the same kind of mistrust and distrust with the system. And we have spent so much money securing this with technology from left, right, and center, with increasing the number of personnel from left, right, and center, with information, everything has been put into this to make it as transparent as possible. Yet, we don't have trust in it. A lot of dispute. Why?
I think, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to the home of the Situation Room. I think that what we see here, that's why actually I had to write a book. Last time I was here, I gave you a book called Strategic Thinking,
Yes.
10 Lessons of 1,000 Strategies. Now this book we have Strategic Thinking, the Dynamics of Political Strategies in Africa, and one of the chapter is the cost of election in Africa. And let me just give you some numbers, first of all. Globally, the best practice is that you should be able to spend $5 for one vote. Now, Tanzania did $17 per vote. Uganda did $12 per vote. The Kenyan one is $35 per vote. And yet, we have not got results. Uganda got results in their first attempt. Tanzania got theirs. Rwanda was doing $13 per vote. They got theirs in the first attempt. And in Kenya in 2017, we didn't get our president in the first attempt. And yet, even in 2022, we may not get ours, even maybe in the second attempt. Because I told people on live television that election will begin on 9th of August. Begin. And we don't know. It's almost infinite. So even the 44.6 billion shillings we spent so far, still, we may still not get a president. Because look here. You saw the Supreme Court submissions. Why is election expensive? One, we spend money to get the vote into the ballot and to be tallied. Yeah. Secondly, IEBC have been taken to court. Who is paying all those bills for IEBC legal bills? Who is going to pay the bills for the individual commissioners? And who is going to pay all the bills which will relate? And it's not just presidential election. There are so many contestations, some MCA, some MP. Imagine IEBC will be in court needing a lawyer for all those political petitions which is taking place. Secondly, we shut down schools for 2 weeks. That is, you are looking at it, we are not looking about direct cost, we're talking about indirect cost as well. Schools are closed, economy is under recession. You see what has happened. Now, defaulters in loans have crossed what's called a $500 billion default in the banking sector. Why? There's no cash flow because businesses were shut down, schools were shut down, business were disrupted. So if you look at the total indirect cost, I calculated it, I can tell you it is something to do with 4.2 trillion cost to the economy running one general election.
Prof,
if I calculate the direct and indirect costs.
That's more than the national budget plus some on top.
I'm telling you.
Hey.
It's more.
So we're saying running the country for a year, literally,
yes,
running the country for a year, 12 months on the fiscal calendar.
Yes.
To go to the vote for Kenyans in 2 weeks, maybe a month after, because of all this hullabaloo we see going on at the Supreme Court. is actually more plus some change than the national budget.
If we postponed this election for 5 years, we could not need to look for money anywhere to run the economy for 1 year. That's what we're saying. Actually, we could have a surplus.
That is assuming that those who spent their money on the elections would spend it on activities that would promote the development of the country.
Yeah, actually, what I was, even if you want to drag that, even we are going to see as a problem immediately after the election, because what's happening? You know, there were almost 14,600 people contesting for only 1,422 positions, and they were pouring money in all counties, all wards, all constituencies, and nationally. That budget has been cut now. If you call anybody Mheshimiwa who didn't win, they get annoyed. So there are over 14,000 people who are losers in this election, and they are not spending anymore. Actually, they are in a financial crisis. But there's always a way the economy balances, because the economy is in that way that when things are under election, even printing houses shifted to printing for what? Elections. Sometimes I wanted to print my books. Somebody printing governors, whatever manifestos, would keep my books in the printer for long because they're now printing for governors.
Yeah.
If you're so there's a way the economy balances, that people shift to one thing, and then after that the shift goes to another. For example, when schools closed, money was moving around. When there's no election and no schools open, you know, education is among the highest spenders. Actually, the highest spending ministry in Kenya is education.
Yes.
And that's why when it is on a slowdown, actually you can see things crumble. So there's no big deal. But you see what's happening? It is not a productive investment. Money thrown into getting people to travel for an election, people flying from here, choppers moving, is not productive. It's consumption. So it does not help the economy. I wouldn't be able to say that spending an election is good because it makes cash flow move. It is non-productive investment.
When you say non-productive, what do you mean?
All the election budget, if you look at it, there is nothing that is an investment of tomorrow. That's why after the election, things are in shutters now. Look, just go to Kamukunji ground and look at the amount of papers which were being put there. We need to clean that environment. There's no politician who will go and bring down their posters. It is an environmental challenge, which is another cost to the election. Look at all papers thrown around in this nomination. Look at all those papers which were being printed, ballot. I can't even name them. It's a big cost to us. In fact, if you look at it thinking that money is moving, actually we are throwing money that later we have to clean. So it's not actually a positive sum game.
Actually, it's odd that you should say that, because in my neck of the woods, I've actually seen teams of very young people cleaning up posters, oddly enough. I've never seen it before. But I'm seeing, and they're in T-shirts, and they're actually walking around all the posters that were on billboards, that were on walls. I've actually been seeing them cleaning them. Now, when you say a productive investment, I still don't understand it, because
Now let's just say,
Yes.
if you take the money which were being used in printing
Yes.
posters for campaigns,
yes,
and give a child what is called scholarship. I sit here. I grew up in a very poor family, but somebody gave me a scholarship. Look at that going back. Like if you look backwards, now you gain fast forward. If we had this money being spent on nominations, a governor spent around 350 million shillings minimum to win. You understand? How many people could go to school? So if you look at these ones going forward, how many? They are being sworn today, isn't it? Now some governors asking for 20 million for the ceremony today, swearing in ceremony. Now you just said that whether did they promise manifestos that the swearing ceremony will cost 17 million?
Assumption of office, Fred.
So assumption of office. So I'm saying you are looking at all those things, assumption of office. After this spend today, it's about food, drinks, and logistics. Tell me what after tomorrow you can go and harvest that money from. So those are consumptions. They are not.
You see why I ask? Huh? I think it's my ignorance, really, because I'm looking at the posters production. I'm looking at ferrying people. When ferrying, I'm looking at people in the transport industry benefiting. I am looking at people, as you say, who are in the publishing business benefiting. I'm seeing people who work, they're benefiting because they have work to do and they can be paid. Meaning, there's money circulating. Now, for the person who is spending the money, I am looking at it that they're not building anything to speak of, but they're investing so that, I'm using the word investment loosely here, so that they can get to a certain position.
Yeah.
Now,
So while I agree with you,
yes,
if you go to a restaurant and eat, that money is called consumption. Because, for example, national budget is divided into developmental budget and consumption budget.
Yes.
Paying a salary is seen as consumption. But investing in a manufacturing plant, building a road, building an IT infrastructure, those are investments because they become assets that later can generate money. But what goes into your stomach? And look here, every household in Nairobi, in fact in Nairobi, I can say in Nairobi, more than 85% of the money they earn goes into their stomach or clothes. Now, stomach and clothes, you know this stomach, in the morning it wants, at 10 o'clock it wants, then at lunch it wants, dinner it wants, and there's just something that passes through it. Nothing stays. So that is not something productive. But if you buy, for example, an asset, you go and buy a house that later can generate rent. Now that is an asset. But if you put things in the stomach, in clothes, people dress to kill. No one dies. So you see, those kind of investments are what I call consumption.
I agree with you, Dr. But you see, where I'm coming from, I'm looking at well-being
Yeah.
and health as being a worthwhile destination for an investment.
Yes.
Because in the absence of the well-being, everything else that we talk about cannot actually happen, because our activities are human activities. And when you talk of production, it's human beings who are involved in that process. So well-being, in my mind, is, if I may repeat myself, a worthwhile investment.
As that is good, let's just do numbers. 4.2 trillion invested in an election. Now, the 3.1 trillion, which was the national budget, 35% of that money was infrastructural investment. In the 4.2 trillion, 100% was consumption. That's my cry. And numbers don't lie. So that's the thing. So look at the 3.3 trillion budget. It went to education. People went to school because of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It went to healthcare.
Yeah.
They built a healthcare facility.
Yeah.
It went into building a
Road,
railway.
a dam.
It went to build a dam. But
No,
here
it-
there is no dam
it-
after the 4.2
No,
trillion.
No dam was built.
Okay.
No,
some
there are
were not
dams
dam.
that were built. Some were not.
Some were not, but there are dam which is complete. I can show you there's a dam which is
Oh no,
complete.
there are many
Ziba-
dams that have been completed.
Ziba Dam is
Oh
complete.
no, I am aware. I'll just
You're just being.
facetious.
You're just being.
I'm just being facetious. Oh, there are many dams that were completed. I know.
So let me tell you, the 4.2 trillion was spent by IBC within which period? Also look at that, not it? This was around 1 week. 1 week, they spend 85% of that money. Of course, if you put the ICT, could take the other 15%, the investment before and the planning and the rest, isn't it? But the last 1 week, they spend 85% of the 4.2 trillion. But here, this 3.1 trillion in 1 year. Again, when I give you food, if I give you food that is worth your dinner, I give you that food that you can eat for 1 year, give you once. I'm sure it's going to make your stomach rumble or you'll be sick.
You will die.
You will
Yes.
die. Okay, so what are we saying here essentially? So one of two things can happen.
Yeah.
Is that are we saying that this money that is spent on elections in Kenya, which is triple sum, I mean, look at what's happening in Uganda with $12 and Kenya at 35, it's 3 times the amount.
Yeah.
So are we saying that should we look at ways, if you're going to end in a disputed result anyway, should we look at ways in which this amount should be significantly reduced? That's A. Or are you saying, fine, spend this 4.2 trillion, whatever, but then let us have a result? What are we saying?
First, spend whatever you want, but let's have results, no matter how high or low. Because without a result, spend is not useful. Secondly, this money can be brought down. And the problem he said before, cost of trust. No one trusts anybody. And that's why all Kenyans were telling results to check with Chebukati. If we believe IBC will tally results in the right way, no Kenyan will tally. So every political party say they are tallying centers.
Everybody has agents.
Everybody has their own agents. Everybody is tallying. This is a cost to economy. Do you know what we call it? Time spent on poverty. Time spent on poverty is time you spend on something which is not productive. Kenyans sat on their couch. They were tallying like Chebukati. What if we voted, went to do work that generated something to the economy? So if you look at, I told you, if you calculate all this approach, so as I agree with you, one is that we should spend as little as possible. Secondly, we need results. If we cannot do the two, let's do China. There's no election in China. And it is among the most growing and progressive economy.
You know
why are we wasting time to do elections when we can't have results and we're just making ourselves strangle?
Prof, when you say that people start shouting about human rights and they start shouting about, people should have an opportunity to make the decision because it is a democratic space, etc., etc.
But the point is, if you
At what
cannot be
cost?
democratic, why are you trying to pretend you're democratic? Just do the honorable thing by saying, for me, I'm going to be a dictator. Like at home, I usually tell my family household that 1-2 decisions are mine. The rest you can debate about. So, for example, I know I'm a professor. Guiding people in a career in the family, that's what I'll do because I have the competence to do it. And I'm an example to them. So that is easy. On matters, for example, what do you want to eat for food? What's the color of the couch at home? That is not my
Curtains.
competence and I won't waste my time on. So sometimes you just have to say, this matter is mine, this one is yours. Are we able to run a free, credible, transparent, and verifiable election? We are still not there. Should we spend time and give the head of state, for example, if I would make a decision, let Uhuru Kenyatta sit there, let Kenya sort out properly how to carry out a credible, verifiable, and transparent election is when we come back. Because you'll bring Chebukati back, isn't it? For example, if you had the conversation yesterday, if you dispute these results and nullify it, who will preside over it? Is it Chebukati? We are going to have a crisis. You understand? Because Azimia will say, not Chebukati anymore. We are going to enter a crisis. How are we benefiting? Kids are not going to go to school. We will be having trouble with work.
Yeah.
Is it beneficial? So why do we bring what cannot work? Why don't we just tell Uhuru Kenyatta, in temporary incumbency, just sit there?
But how do we know what will work? Because what you're trying to address here is a trust issue.
Yes.
It'll be Chebukati gets out, and OGOLA comes in.
No.
How do we know that OGOLA's work is going to be trusted?
First and foremost, I even wrote in this book, there is no politician, I'm sorry to say this on air, there is no politician who goes to an election wanting free, fair election. Let's be honest. Because there's technology to solve it. Every politician starts by saying, how can I steal? And that's why everybody's...
Who can help me steal?
Who can help me steal? So if at all everybody starts by saying, how can I win free, fair election, then the other person also says, how can they win? But if everybody says, how can I win it? How can I turn this in my favor? Then everybody is also trying to either stop or trying to steal more. For example, I know there's a discrepancy among all the Form 34As, isn't it? Are all the forms only favoring one coalition and the forms from one coalition is clean, the other one is totally dirty? If you get the answer to that question, it tells you that everybody approaches it in another way. Maybe somebody was just smarter, or somebody had got the levers to do it. But the point is, I'm sure even if you run for governor one day, and I tell you how to steal without running a fair election, my brother, if you're in politics,
I'll go for that option.
You'll go for that option.
I can't invest tens of millions of shillings.
Sure.
Of the results.
Yeah,
And you're not sure. Okay, so can we take that same statement and apply it to the population? Why invest all this money? Why invest all this time? Why take all this risk? And you can be sure that you do not know what is going to happen. Is it possible to go into an election? I'm not even asking about who's going to win.
Yes.
I'm saying, is it then not possible to go into an election saying, we're doing this because we know we will get a result and then we'll be able to move on with our lives?
Yeah, that is the thing, is that we are not sure. Secondly, it's not in our control even to make that decision as a population.
But isn't it the very least that people can expect that you'll wake up in the morning on the 9th of August in the next future, right?
Yes.
And isn't that the barest minimum that we are asking for? That at the very least you should be able to say, I voted, they've counted, I trust the system, and thereafter we have a result. It's not even about who, Prof.
No, we should be able to put people accountable. In fact, in Bomas or Kenya, when the IBC gave the first press conference, I asked the commission, has the system taken control of IBC, or IBC is controlling the system that they procured? And they gave me a theoretical answer. And today, even we are saying, a system that cannot tally, because we are trying to say Chebukati committed arithmetic error, isn't it? The system is there. Everything was put in the system. You have a calculator that cannot say 10 times 4 is 40.
It's not even 10 times. It is 10 plus 10 plus 10
Yes.
plus 10.
So if you have just said it very well. We bought a very expensive technology. It cannot just add addition, which can be done manually. So I'm just trying to say that for me, in Kenya here, we should not have been asking which coalition won, which coalition disputed. We should be asking, first of all, can we get a result that can be put on the table that common sense can say this is a result? We deserve it.
I think that can be done if only you all agree what result means. I think we all start by just disputing the meaning of the word result. If 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 equals 40, and that will be the result.
Yes.
Others will say, start with this 10, don't start with this 10.
Or why didn't you do 10
why
times
didn't you
4?
10 times 4? Why didn't you 10 times 2?
Or why didn't you do 50 minus 10? I mean, seriously speaking.
But you see,
problem
the law is clear that Form 34A is final. You understand?
Yes.
Now, this will start by saying, how do you move from A to B,
and then B to C.
and then B to C?
The law is also very clear on how you move. The problem, Prof, is because the law is very, just like that formula, 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 shall be 40.
Yes.
The law is very clear.
Yes.
Now you start bringing in our 844 Ujuaji and everything else and start asking, but why can't we just do 50 minus 10?
Yeah.
But if we know these are 4 places, why do we have to do 10, 10, 10, 10? Why can't one be 12? Okay, so this one was 10. Is this one in bold or in italics? If this 10 is in bold letters, plus 10 in italics, plus 10 in Romans, plus this 10 in Arial, do they all add up to 40, really?
They say
Does the
numbers
10
don't
in
lie.
Arial...
They say numbers don't lie, so there should be no problem. The issue here, which I put here, if you look at one of the chapters of this book, it is stated whether all institutions that begin with the word independent are actually independent. And IBC, according to the conclusion, I put a table that if you use logic, you reach out by saying IBC is partially independent. Why? Financially, they are not independent.
Yeah.
By appointment, they are
not.
appointed. By being appointed, the person who pays the piper, isn't it, determines the... So now, when you are being paid by an institution and you are independent, you are being appointed by an institution and you are independent, then that already says that there is an influence. So everybody believes there is influence inside IEBC. Why don't we make IEBC fully what? Independent. If you look
How would we make it fully independent?
financially and institutionally, there are matrices there. It's in this book you'll see.
It is true, but then IEBC don't have a mechanism for raising revenue. The money has to come from somewhere.
It
No,
can be guaranteed.
It
and
can be
ring-fenced.
guaranteed.
How?
Like in the US, for example, they have made their commissions very independent. The election has been devolved. For example, if you look at different states, they'll carry the elections, do the state election, determine who is the governor, determine who is the senator there. They will go on to tally the ones for president and submit to the national body, telling them in this state, these are the numbers that's for president. And it's independent how they do it. For us here in Kenya, You find that, all these meetings we are saying so and so was meeting with IEBC. You could see so many things. And let me tell you, by the way, I don't know you in Bomas. I was in Bomas. It was a scene of crime. By all means. Why should we see a car entering Bomas with money in suitcases? Because I saw this. If you didn't see, maybe you didn't want to see it. But it was seen.
But us were not at Bomas.
Why do you allow things which are not allowed to
Connie,
enter into the tallying center?
Is money contraband? Let's take a break.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Professor Fred OGOLA is still here with us in the studio. We are talking about how much money, time, and other resources we put into an election, and then we dispute the result of an election. And you ask yourself, so what on earth is going on? You talked about independence.
Yeah.
So, and we've actually said this many times, even as far back as 2-3 years ago on the show, that for as long as we have politicians feeling like they have the biggest role to play in an election, and therefore in the management and operations of the IEBC, that body is not independent.
Yeah, because when you're in Bomas, you'll see that there were so many politicians who came there to watch their vote. Why should we? And in fact, I was even asking these things about observers. What do they normally observe? Observation in voting, if you're not on that floor where verification is taking place, but you're sitting on the terrace,
Yes.
what are you observing? And then Chebukati was also very interesting that he brought a choir to sing and entertain. So people are tallying numbers, and we are having a choir entertaining you. In your mathematical class, why are you being entertained? So there are so many questions are being asked on all these things about independence. And I told you, the question of independence, I think we should start from there. Then the second thing is about trust. As I said, we are waiting for 5th of September for Supreme Court to make a decision. So I was just asking you during the break that, do you believe that the decision taken by Supreme Court is what you are waiting for, or you are waiting for the reaction from those who are the parties interested? Are you, for example, those in the coalition for Azimio will be waiting, then what will Raila say? Not really what
It
the
doesn't
Supreme Court
matter
will
what the
say.
Supreme Court says.
And the other guys in Kenya Kwanza will say, now then what will William Ruto say?
Yeah.
Whatever he says is what will matter.
Is the decision of
Yes. And in fact, the headline of the newspapers also may just go direction by saying, so-and-so disputes the results. I am waiting for a day when headline for newspaper in Kenya will be after the announcement by Chebukati, President-elect Ruto or President-elect Raila, not that Chebukati declared him the winner and it has... No. We just want to say President-elect. It is. Have you seen such a headline since you were born? I've never seen it. From 1992, I didn't vote that time. I was too young. 1997, I also didn't vote. My first voting was 2002. That year, the headline was very clear, isn't it? It is President Kibaki who is the president-elect. That was very clear. But for us, since then, it has always
thanks
been...
largely
Yes.
due to Uhuru Kenyatta conceding,
Yes.
right? And Mzee Moi saying nothing
Yes.
about it. So there's no dispute at all anywhere.
Yes.
There's nobody who's saying, but our guy has.
And now let's go back again. What was the budget for 2002 election? It was actually 20% of what we spend now. Thirdly, what was the strength of the election body there? It was weaker than what we have now, isn't it? So it is nothing to do with how much you spend. It is nothing to do with the strength of who is in charge. It is to do with us, our perception. And perception is reality. Let me tell you what, Siti, if you think I'm rude, and no matter what I think, I can think I'm not. The perception that I'm rude is reality, that I am perceived to be rude. So do we perceive IEBC to be independent? Do we perceive Supreme Court to be independent? Do we perceive our politicians to be the right people? So this is the question that Kenyans need to actually ask themselves, because it's about perception.
It's interesting about perception and how they can be disabused. As you were speaking, I was thinking how it is because of our ethnic, forget it. Our tribal inclinations. There are certain assumptions. If I'm a Luo, I am an ODM member. If I am a Kamba, I am a Wiper member. If I'm a Kalenjin, I'm a UDA member. If I'm a Kikuyu, I'm a Jubilee member. Now that one was disabused in this election, was it not? So much for assumptions.
Yes.
Because assumptions...
Was it disabused?
If I'm going by the results that we've just seen and what happened in central Kenya, I would argue it has been disabused.
No, if you are a Kikuyu, you are a UDA member.
That's why, yes, and I said the assumption was...
It has not changed for any other part.
No, Eric.
When you talk about Kalonzo being now the kingpin or Vukambani.
Eric, the assumption was Jubilee was a Kikuyu party. Assumption. I'm not talking about reality.
When it was alive.
Oh, Jubilee is still alive.
Yeah.
Yes. And the fact that Jubilee was not dominant in terms of the results that came out of Central, I am saying that particular notion was disabused.
Yeah.
So it can no longer be held true. It's just a thought, it's a notion. Because the generalizations usually do not speak the absolute truth for that particular situation. It's just a perception. It's a notion.
But City, the guys of Azimio will tell you that Central was rigged, so those numbers don't reflect the reality.
Until it is proved that indeed rigging took place. It is just their view, it is just their perception, it is what they feel, it's what they think. As to whether it's the truth, that's what I think we're waiting to see.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And in fact, what I'm trying to say here in the whole scenario we are talking about, if we just not focus on the coast only, this book highlights about politics and game theory. And this is what makes even more interest here. Like, when you are running for an election, you are a player, either as a party or as a candidate. You are a player. In football, we have a player. For example, a football team. Then you have what is called the fans. Those are the voters. In football, we have fans.
Yes.
In politics, we have the voters. The other ecosystem here, we have the issue, what is called the payoff. What are you looking for? A win or a loss? So that's the payoff. What do you get after all this? In the whole scenario of football, we have a referee. And that's now, in this case, IEBC. And to make it interesting in football, we have what we call VAR. So when you score a goal, the referee whistle and says it's a goal, but we have to VAR to confirm that that is a goal.
Yeah.
So again, in football here, you bring to election, we have a super referee, and that's the Supreme Court. So in this election, Ruto scored. The referee blew the whistle and said he scored.
Goal.
Of course, other linesmen disagreed that it's a goal. Sometimes in football, a lineman says offside, the referee says a goal, and the one to referee goes. So this is what's happening at IBC now. Because some commissioners say it's an offside. But now we are waiting for what's called VAR, which is now the Supreme Court, the super referee, to determine and say, well, we agree with these linesmen that there was an offside. And that offside is supported by the player, which is Azimio. And the other referee who stood by saying it's a goal is supported by the Kenya Kwanza. Are you seeing how that is complex? Are you seeing the complexity of that thing? Like in a football match, look at what used to happen between AFC Leopard and Gor Mahia. Now, what happens is now the fans may decide the outcome of the match that there is no match.
They get into
so people will fight until the match is postponed.
And
that is what is being in the coast here. You
Can I give you a different perspective?
Yes.
Because, yes, what if you're assuming that the sport that is ongoing is football, and yet it is actually wrestling?
You're changing the whole game.
Even wrestling.
Yes.
Wrestling.
And if you'll be talking about the rules, and you're saying, why are you holding this person? Why are you holding them down? They say, hi, what game are you playing exactly? And you're saying, it's football. I say, no. Look carefully. What do you really think is actually going on here? Is it football or is it wrestling?
Is it wrestling for TV, the one that is acted, or wrestling proper?
You're talking about wrestling, which is choreographed.
Choreographed wrestling.
Choreographed wrestling is entertainment, it's interesting. That's what I'm speaking of.
Is that's the one you're saying?
Yeah, now this other one, which is you see in the Olympics, boring stuff.
So if you are doing wrestling and Kenyans are thinking you are playing football, that's why there's the big word called opaqueness. We are under opaqueness because some people think we are playing football, but actually we are in wrestling. And it's wrestling which is choreographed. So there's no rules normally. So rules are not important in a choreographed wrestling, isn't it? Because you find that somebody can come from outside and make you lose a match and was not a player.
Yeah.
And make you lose a match which was choreographed so that you should lose.
Yes. So if that's what is happening, then why should we even do it? Now the question should be, should we even invest in such kind of a match where even rules are not being obeyed? Where the constitution is clear, like you said, from 34A to 34D. Yet, we still disagree on that. And it's not about words, about numbers only. Numbers. 1, 2 plus. You
Professor,
say 10
then
plus.
would we then argue that those who have abstained from voting perhaps are the ones who've understood this whole
the
process
points.
better? They're the ones
They
who
knew what they were doing.
They've said,
They're
this
not
thing,
playing this game.
I'm not playing this game with you. Forget it.
Yeah,
You
because
play if you want. I am not getting involved in this
In
until I
fact-
have clarity
in
as to
fact,
whether I'm
it-
playing football or whether I'm wrestling.
in fact, if you look at the elections towards the end, the deputy president was very much focusing. Maybe let me call him president-elect, deputy president. For us, we're in Azimio.
President-elect.
Yes, deputy president. He continuously said,
Since the law is clear.
yes, yes, okay. For the sake of the respect, let me say deputy president-elect. You'll overturn anyway.
No. He's not deputy president-elect. He's deputy president currently, but he's also president-elect. He's both things.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. For the sake of being a Kenyan, let me accept that because you don't dispute laws which you have grown up with. Because when you are in Kenya, I was born here. No matter how laws are not good, that's what has brought us. So let's just obey them.
Okay.
President-elect.
Okay.
He said at the end that my vote cannot be stolen. Why was that important? Was to send a message that you do your part, I'll take care of the vote. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's say he has delivered that, isn't it? In some way. So he's ensured they were not stolen. So we don't know how much, whether he stole, but he said that at least the one he
His
got
were not stolen.
were not stolen.
Okay.
Now, that is always important to say in an election by telling people, you know what? It is not wrestling choreographed. This is football where there is rule of the game and it will be followed.
But
And
you
I'm
see,
sure they are
Professor,
followed.
this is where we, the voter, and we, the citizen, now become duplicitous. Because we are the same people who say you cannot trust what a politician says. And now we are using the converse rule to say that we are holding this politician to account for the words he uttered. So where are we in these matters? Should we take what politicians tell us seriously, or should we actually disregard them as just mere talk?
But you see, politics, in this book, they say propaganda sells more than facts. And in fact,
Propaganda is more entertaining.
yes, in fact, I ran for MP for Ugenya.
You did?
Yes, under ODM ticket. I'm the one who won it so far.
Okay.
And I was not given the ticket. The ticket was given to somebody else. And I told the owner of the ticket, give it to that guy. Ugenya is not going to be ODM. And it came to pass. So I told you that when I went to campaign one day, I sat down with my campaign team to work on my messaging, and they told me, talk about these people want road. I told them, nonsense. What I'll tell them is proper propaganda, because propaganda sells more than that. And I can tell you, if you go to any rally and you mention facts, no one will talk
No one
about
listens to you.
Do you know a KPI for having a good rally? Is that as women and men are walking towards home, they are talking about you. If they are talking about your opponent, you have lost. So here, the sitting member of parliament was there, and I came and say, oh, your name is David. Yeah, just like the Bible. You know, David was a very humble man when he was being elected. When he became the king, he built a very big tower. He was watching where women were showering in many places, and he took Uriah's wife. That's what you're now doing. So you are not supposed.
Are you rewriting the Bible even as we speak?
No. Yes, but I'm saying, I said now, you as David, you became too proud. So I am Solomon, your son. Give me this thing you cannot build for God, the temple. Give it to me. I'm telling you, when people are walking home, they said, we have
They
now
called you
gotten the
Solomon.
Solomon of Ugenya. But if you said, I'm going to build roads, Orengo has promised that road for more than 60 years, and no one will listen to that. So, if you want to put politicians to task for what they said in manifestos, forget it. I've just told you they are being sworn in today, or they are taking assumption of office. Immediately, they are spending 25 million on swearing in.
No, it's actually it's a process beyond just swearing in.
Kurudishia mwili shukrani.
Was that part of manifesto? No,
You won't say it. You won't say it immediately like that. But
They talk about 100 days, isn't it? The days begin today. Kupigia mwili pole. That was manifesto number 1.
Professor, what made you think of going into politics and actually then going into politics?
One which is important is that I grew up in Ugenya. I know what people have been promised, and I saw that the politicians we have been electing will never transform Ugenya. So I gave myself for this position because I know the issues which are there. Young people are suffering. I grew there. I know what it is. Education issues, health issues, and the rest. So when I went into this election, I wanted to deliver something. At the same time, I was privileged to get some connections from Brazil, from Switzerland, and from Norway to build certain things, money, like they're going to come and invest in Ugenya. So I saw that if I don't run, this investment which is coming, which can only come through me, will not come. So I went in there. Of course, I lost, and I'm back. And I tell all of it.
Why, of course, you didn't need to lose.
Yes, I did need to lose, but of course, let me tell you what, City. If you go to an election, and you just talked about here, trust, when you lose, agree. Don't even ask, why have I lost? You know, losing an election is failing to get the certificate of nomination, like I didn't get. Don't worry about many people loved me, I did more work, I spent more money. Just agree. Your KPI, which is in this book, key performance indicator, is getting the certificate of election.
If you didn't get it,
you lost.
that's it.
So in this election, Ruto has what?
The certificate.
Certificate of what? Election. He's the winner. Raila did not get certificate of what? Election.
He's the
a
loser.
loser. That's why he's overturning the win. You understand? Let's accept what has happened. So I lost. And actually, this book says your life before, during, and after election. First, before you go to election, know what you'll do when you win, know what you'll do when you lose.
But you know, Prof,
Yes.
this particular election that we've had goes beyond what you're saying. Because the real challenge from what we've heard, we had the chief agent here.
Yes.
What we did, and according to his assertions, it is a question of even that certification and the process that leads to it. They're saying, that one. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
That one. Now, the nature of the politics in this country is probably best described in the way you've put it. But the question we've asked in this studio, must it be that, and must we accept it as the norm?
No, of course. But you see what's happening, my brother? I can give you the story of one renowned philosopher called Socrates. A philosopher who was transforming Greece. And they told him, because you have used your wisdom to pollute the youth, you'll be hanged according to the law of Greece. So his friends came with a strategy to make him escape out of Greece so that he does not die. Because his death was by drinking poison. And he said, I'm a Greek. These rules of Greece are toxic, but I live by them. I will drink poison. So even before we change the situation, that's what it is. When anybody was running, if those ones were running, they knew what it is. They know. Even that chief agent was supposed to know that process of getting the certificate. So if you know that process, go for the process which works, which makes you get the certificate. Don't go and tell us it is bad.
Don't
it is
enter the
biased.
game. Play the game. And
Play
then start
that
saying,
game. This is what it is.
You see, the
ati hawa
question,
walikuwa wanacheza
Like
na
mine,
mpira
I
ya
was being
karatasi.
told, before you see so and so, you can't get your certificate even if you win. Then I said, okay, fine. I didn't play by the rules. This is how the party works, isn't it? So I can't say I want to change the party. I accepted I lost.
actually, on that particular note, there'll be, should we say, a differing of perspectives. Because the reason why such challenges come about
Yes.
is because there's not a latent but an obvious argument that the very processes that our laws state have been subverted. That is really it.
Yeah.
So a new paradigm has been introduced. And this paradigm is what people are accepting as the norm. And yet they're saying, but we already have a clarity as to what ought to be.
Yeah.
So why should we accept this other notion that is not what we know is actually, if we're talking about legally speaking, in the law? That really, in my mind, is the discussion that I see.
FIFA have rules on how goals are scored.
Yep.
And when the people implementing it, like referees, could not abide by it, they have introduced VAR.
VAR.
Now, I'm telling you, the implementers, the players in that arena are more important. And the players are not just the politicians, even us.
Even the
Who was
spectators.
stuffing ballot? Did you see any candidate stuffing a ballot? It was a Kenyan.
Candidate, I didn't see anyone stuffing a ballot.
Okay. But there's an accusation of ballot stuffing. Or at least you saw someone accusing somebody falsely that they stuff ballots. So all the accusations we're seeing are done by Kenyans. Lawyers are going to court saying, like now, Azimio submitted the petition 21 prayers that boils down to around 9 or 10, isn't it? And then a same lawyer says, another submission that writes off the entire 9. And it's impossible that both of them are correct.
Yeah.
One person may be telling us a lie, or at least giving us evidence which does not stand. And these are Kenyans, and those are professionals. So if that is the rot, you serve, I'm just offering my
But
professional.
Prof, is it really the rot or is it the law? Because you see, the reason why we have a referee called a court
Yes.
is for that very same reason.
I think the bottom line here, CT, is if there's a referee, linesman, and VAR, as spectators,
Allow
follow
them to
the
do their thing.
linesman, referee, VAR.
Yes.
Now, if ref does not rule in your favor, and then you say, how you ref end? Or ref does not rule in your favor, then go to VAR. If VAR says this is it, that's it.
I will say the VR was hacked.
Yeah,
for a rematch.
there's a rematch.
yes.
Oh, get into the pitch. Anyway, Prof, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you too, yes.
What's the name of the book? Just quickly.
The book
in
is
5
called
seconds.
Strategic Thinking, The Dynamics of Political Strategies in Africa.
It's available in all bookshops.
No,
Not
I'm
yet.
not selling my books through bookshops because they look like commodities. This book, you call me, you get me, I give it to you.
Hey,
Voila.
sawa.
Yes.
Have a lovely day, people. We'll see you here tomorrow. It's 10 a.m.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.